Olá pessoal, tudo bem com vocês? Estamos aqui para mais uma reunião extraordinária do nosso grupo de apoio nacional a pessoas com zumbido. Nós temos hoje uma surpresa para vocês, que é um convidado internacional pela primeira vez. O Larry Roberts, do Canadá, da Universidade de McMaster, é um pesquisador super famoso, chegou aqui em São Paulo ontem, vai embora amanhã, então era hoje mesmo que a gente tinha que dar um jeito de colocá-lo disponível para todos vocês. Então a gente vai falar aqui em inglês e daí vocês vão poder aproveitar depois a legenda para quem precisar. Larry, it's a very nice pleasure to have you here among us. Actually, it's an honor, okay? So you are very famous and respected research, and I would like very much to know a little bit more about how you got interested in tinnitus.
Well, your words are very kind. I'm not sure about the famous and respected part.
You are.
But it's a pleasure to be here. I got interested in tinnitus for two reasons, actually. One of which is that my laboratory back in Canada studies neuroplasticity in the human auditory system, which is the question of how does the experience of sound change the tuning of neurons in the brain. So our aim there was to understand the rules that describe this form of plasticity. And we thought, well, if we understand those rules, maybe we can apply them to tinnitus.
Makes sense.
Change some of the neural phenomena that generate the tinnitus percept. So that's how I got interested. One reason.
Okay.
But there's a second reason, which is I have tinnitus myself.
Okay.
And so at this time, this was about 1998, we took some psychoacoustic measurements of my own tinnitus with some tools that we developed in the laboratory. And those results did not agree with the prevailing view of the neural mechanism underlying tinnitus at the time.
Oh, okay.
So I thought it was important to actually implement these tools and do a systematic study of the properties of tinnitus. And we did that. We've done both of those things.
Okay, yeah.
That's how we got interested.
Yes, and it's amazing to see how many researchers worldwide started to study tinnitus because of their own tinnitus. It's very interesting.
It was convenient to have a subject in the laboratory. It was me.
Of course, I agree. And tell me a little bit about which specific topics about tinnitus are you studying nowadays in your lab?
Well, we've studied basically three topics. One was to measure the psychoacoustic properties that I just described. So we've done that. And those results tell us that it's what neurons in the hearing loss region do that generates the tinnitus percept. And stopping what those neurons do suppresses it. So that was one line of work, and we continue to do that line of work. A second line of work is we wanted to know how the rules of neuroplasticity and attention are changed in tinnitus. And they are changed in ways that make sense from what we understand the neural changes in tinnitus to be. So that was another topic. And a third topic was to try to understand how changes in what are called primary auditory cortex and non-primary cortex relate to tinnitus and its suppression by masking. And we worked on that problem too. It turns out that the changes in the primary auditory cortex track the tinnitus percept. The changes in the other regions are different in tinnitus, but they don't track the tinnitus percept. I have to add one thing, actually.
Good, go ahead.
There's a fourth topic, which is the prevention of tinnitus. That's something we've written about, and I'm not written that, not really, but one of the things that I like best is the chapter on prevention that I wrote with my colleague Dan Bosniak and Billy Martin from Oregon Science University, because ultimately that's the solution to the problem of tinnitus, is to prevent hearing loss.
Yeah, I think this is a very important chapter as well. I completely agree with you. And tell me, do you think that in the last few years, the literature about tinnitus and the clinical practice are going into good directions, or do you think that time's passing and we're not going anywhere?
No, I think they're both going in the right direction. On the scientific side, I look back at the last 10 years and it's really amazing how much we've learned about the changes in the brain that take place following hearing loss. And it's those changes in the brain that affect auditory pathways, but also other pathways, non-auditory pathways, that are responsible for the tinnitus percept. And we didn't know that. 10 or 12 years ago. We do know it now. On the clinical side, I think progress there is slower because tinnitus is such a difficult problem. But I think there is progress, both in terms of therapeutic treatments for tinnitus, but also new directions. I mean, people discover new ways of trying to intervene with tinnitus or understand its mechanism that come from that research. So I'm optimistic that some of these are going to pay off.
Good to know this. Okay, and tell me a little bit more of how things work in Canada. If a patient has tinnitus, what is he or she supposed to do? I mean, about the medical schedule. Do they go to a primary doctor first, or do they go to an audiologist? Do they go to an ENT? Tell me a little bit more.
I think almost without exception they would go to the family doctor first.
Okay.
And then the family doctor would refer them to other professionals. And those professionals most likely would be an ENT physician to start with. It could be an audiologist. And then there could be subsequent referrals after that point to radiology, to internal medicine. But it all would start with the family physician. And there are several reasons for that. One of which is that that's the portal for entry to the medical specialties in Canada. We have a national healthcare system there that's funded.
Okay.
So a person does not have to pay to go see their family physician. They just can't walk in and see an ENT physician. They need to have a referral, because that's how the ENT physician gets paid.
Yeah, okay.
So it kind of works that way. And how well does it work? I think that really depends on how good your family doctor is, and it also depends on where they are. So in large cities like Toronto or Hamilton's pretty good size, or Ottawa or Montreal or Vancouver, I think you would get pretty good support. But in the smaller centers, it could be more of a challenge.
Do you have any idea about the prevalence of tinnitus among Canadians? Is there any specific study about this, or do you think that the prevalence might be the same as any other country?
There are Canadian data on hearing loss. I'm not sure about the prevalence of tinnitus, but I think what we know, or what we believe, is that it's fairly similar to what would be the case in other Western industrialized societies.
Okay.
Now, I mean, in certain cohorts it's much higher. This would be true, for example, in the United States and other sectors too. So in the military, it's much more common. I think it's more common. I'm not sure about this, but I think it's more common in the Canadian North because of the use of firearms for hunting and this sort of thing. Although that's not a large population, but on the whole, I think it's probably similar.
And do you receive young people in your research?
Yes. It's surprising, actually, how many master university students find our laboratory. We're not a treatment lab, we're a research lab, but they learn about us from various sources, and they come to see us. And some of them come for tinnitus, most of them do come for tinnitus, but some come for hypoacusis. And then we discover they have tinnitus as well, but it's the hypoacusis that bothers us the most.
Yes, a friend of mine recently told me, did you notice how universal tinnitus is becoming? I mean, everywhere, in all ages. So, yeah, that's
even among my colleagues in McMaster, when we advertised for subjects, it was surprising how many colleagues in my own department.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, so what would you suggest a patient to do as soon as he or she notices that he or she has tinnitus?
Well, the first thing they should do is protect their ears. So if they're riding, large, long machinery, which is, I think, where my tinnitus and hearing loss came from, they should stop doing that. They should stop going to the discotheques. They should stop. They should protect their ears. I don't mean they should go into silence. Silence is very bad for the ear. So they shouldn't eliminate all sound, but they should certainly avoid loud sounds. And they should go see their family doctor. That will be their choice. That will be their entry point. Or they can always send me an email. But I'll have to send them to their family doctor too. We actually have a number of people who just discover us and they want to come to the lab, and we say, by all means, come, and we will do measurements for them and so on.
Good.
But when it actually comes to getting treatment, you need to send them to to people who specialize, of which there are not very many, by the way. This is a problem.
Yeah.
Your institute here is
Worldwide.
awful.
Okay.
I wish we had, a branch plant.
I'm glad to hear this. Okay, and many Brazilians keep talking about cure, and actually I don't think this is a Brazilian way of thinking, but this is more worldwide. But what's your particular thoughts about cure? Do you believe that tinnitus might be cured someday?
I think sometime the day will come when there is a cure for tinnitus. It's not going to be a surgical cure. It might be a pharmacological one. The same approach might not work for everyone. I know that there is a substantial investment on the part of the pharmaceutical industry in finding a cure. But it would still just be a symptomatic treatment, which would still be beneficial because what we really want is not to hear the tinnitus sound. But the cure is to restore hair cells and our nerve fibers in the inner ear, and that's a much more difficult challenge. But also an area where there's a lot of interest because hearing loss is a more common problem than tinnitus. So if we make progress on that front, we'll make progress on a bigger problem. But it will take time, and I'm not sure how long it will take, but I think it will happen. And I think a lot of the advances will come from the molecular side, it will come from basic science, which is where we should be investing.
Yes, and it's interesting because in my mind, the cure itself is like a journey, and you have to reach 100% of improvements. And my point is that while people keep dreaming about the cure, they think that partial improvements are not ideal. But from the clinical point of view, if you have a desperate person about tinnitus, he has a terrible quality of life, we cannot promise, we cannot think about cure nowadays. However, I think that it's our mission to try everything we can, because if he has a 50% improvement, for example, it's not a cure, but it's not nothing. So I think that the word cure itself has a heavy meaning, and it puts everything later in time. So nowadays, I think that the most important thing is that we use everything we have available nowadays to help patients. And when we start to treat patients, we never know who is going to improve 10% or 90% or 0 or 100. So I think that my idea about cure is changing every day.
I agree completely with that. And I also want to pick up on what you said about the person's quality of life. I mean, there really are the two parts to tinnitus. There's the impact on quality of life and the stress and anxiety and sleeplessness that comes from it. And then there's the tinnitus sound itself. And the tinnitus sound is the more difficult thing to treat, although I agree with you that there are cases and treatments that in some cases do certainly improve it or even eliminate it. But the first part, the quality of life part, that's definitely treatable. And for many people, that's the most important part. So yes, cure in some ways is maybe not the right word. Maybe it's people are expecting too much to might get there. But even if we get halfway there, it's a big improvement.
Perfect. Good to hear.
There's another part of this too, which is hope. And I'll tell you a little story. Early on, when I organized a group in Canada to study tinnitus, we had a meeting in Vancouver, and we thought we should have a public forum as part of this meeting. And I thought if 50 people came to this public forum, this would be a success. Well, it was a November night, rainy, dark, Vancouver, soggy night, and when we got down to the facility, they had given us the largest room they had left. We had over 275 people in the room standing at the back. And one of the messages that came through from that meeting was people didn't realize that there were scientists actually working on this problem. and they took such reassurance from that. So I think, there's every reason to be hopeful, and that certainly came through this meeting. And I must say it was inspiring for us there to see that kind of reaction from people who would potentially benefit from Ouvido.
Very, very interesting. Very interesting. Yeah, I like to hear this. Very nice. So for us to finish this today, would you like to leave a message of hope to everybody who's listening?
Well, I think maybe that's what I just did, because I think there's every reason to hope.
Yeah.
Both on the side of improving tinnitus, adapting to tinnitus, and eventually eliminating it.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd also encourage you to speak to your children, speak to your grandchildren. I could tell you more stories about that, but sometimes when you think they're not listening to you, they actually are. That's another reason to be hopeful, not only for themselves, but for those that are coming down the road after you. My parents told me many times, protect your ears, and I didn't pay too much attention to it. But they were right.
Okay, thank you so much. Again, it was an honor to have you here in São Paulo and to have this opportunity to record your opinions on such important thing. I'll talk to them. Pessoal, espero que vocês tenham aproveitado. Eu realmente estou muito honrada com isso. Pra gente é uma inauguração de ter um convidado internacional aqui e acho que é muito bacana a gente ver um pesquisador dessa natureza com uma opinião positiva sobre o tratamento do zumbido e com a esperança para o futuro. E mais do que isso, ver que os problemas que a gente tem aqui no Brasil são muito semelhantes aos problemas que existem no Canadá, no sentido de ter menos interesse ou menos profissionais lidando com o zumbido lá. Então isso acho que é uma coisa que a gente tem que sempre ir em frente, reunindo pessoas que têm interesse, se comunicando como a gente se comunica com os centros de modo internacional, para que mais frutos possam aparecer para todo mundo, tanto para os profissionais como principalmente para os pacientes. Então eu espero que vocês tenham aproveitado, a gente espera vocês na próxima vez, tá bom? Tchau, tchau. Obrigada.
Tchau.